Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing your entire life has shifted, not slowly, not gradually, but instantly, as if you jumped into another version of reality where everything feels lighter, clearer, more aligned. This isn't science fiction, this is the idea behind quantum jumping, a term that sounds mysterious, but holds deep psychological and metaphysical roots. Quantum jumping is not about teleportation, it's about transformation. It's the process of shifting your consciousness to align with a parallel version of yourself who already lives the life you desire. Imagine all versions of you existing simultaneously in a vast field of possibility. One version is broke, another is abundant, one version is sick, another is thriving, one is stuck, one is free, and all of them are real, all of them are valid. And the version you currently experience is simply the one your consciousness is tuned to. Like a radio dial, your beliefs, your focus, your state of being determine which frequency you're tuned into, and that frequency becomes your reality. So what is quantum jumping? It's the conscious shift from one frequency to another, from one identity to another, from one timeline to another, and it begins not with action, but with awareness. Awareness that your current reality is not fixed, it's fluid, it's a mirror, not a sentence. And once you understand that, everything begins to change. Because now you're no longer reacting to reality, you're rewriting it, you're no longer stuck in circumstances, you're selecting from the field of infinite versions of you. And here's the truth, the quantum field doesn't respond to effort, it responds to energy, it doesn't care about what you want, it responds to what you are, what you embody, what you emit. And that emission is not just your thoughts, it's your emotional baseline, your energetic signature, your internal resonance. So if you want to leap into a higher reality, you must first become a higher version of you, and that begins within, not with doing more, but with being different. The mistake most people make is trying to change the external without shifting the internal. They hustle, they force, they strive, but nothing sticks, because the inner signal remains the same, and as long as the signal remains the same, the quantum field has no reason to reflect a new result. So how do you change the signal? How do you become the version of you who lives the life you want, not someday, but now? It begins with identity shift, not surface-level affirmation, but deep embodiment, asking who is the version of me that already has this life, how do they feel, how do they think, how do they move, how do they respond? And then, moment by moment, choosing to be that version, not faking it, but feeling it, not pretending, but presencing. And this is not about delusion, it's about alignment with a frequency that already exists in the field, and when you consistently choose that frequency, you begin to resonate with it, and reality responds, not because you forced it, but because you tuned to it. Think of it like changing the channel on a television. If you don't like what you're watching, you don't argue with the screen, you pick up the remote and switch the channel. The remote in this metaphor is your awareness, your choice, your state of being, and the moment you shift that state, you shift what shows up on the screen of your life. But here's where it gets deeper. Every time you return to an old identity, you reinforce the old timeline. Every time you act from fear or limitation or doubt, you anchor the frequency of the reality you say you want to leave. And that's not judgment, it's feedback. It's the field saying, this is what you're currently broadcasting and we must match it, not to punish you, but to stay coherent, because coherence is the rule of the quantum field. So what does the leap look like in real time? It looks like catching yourself mid-thought and choosing differently. It looks like noticing the fear and moving with courage anyway. It looks like interrupting the old emotional reactions and choosing a new response, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Every leap is preceded by a letting go of the old script, the old story, the old self, and yes, that can feel like death, because it is the death of who you've been to make space for who you're becoming. And in that death is the portal to a parallel you who already knows how this ends, who already lives in the state you desire, who already breathes in the peace you crave. And your job is not to create that version, it's to meet them, to merge with them, to embody them, and when you do, the quantum jump is not just an idea, it's an experience, it's a shift in state, a shift in story, a shift in reality. And reality begins to bend, not in some distant future, but now, because now you're matching the signal of the life you want, and the field mirrors it back, not because it's magic, but because it's law. And the law is simple, you don't get what you want, you get what you are, and you are not your past, not your patterns, not your pain. You are the chooser, you are the signal, you are the cause, and your reality is the effect. So let's go deeper. What actually causes the shift from one timeline to another? What makes the jump possible and sustainable? It's not just desire, it's decision, a decision backed by energy, backed by action, backed by alignment. It's the moment you stop rehearsing the old and start rehearsing the new, rehearsing the thoughts, the emotions, the choices of the higher self, and doing it not once but repeatedly, because repetition creates resonance, and resonance becomes reality. And repetition is not just about what you do, it's about who you become. It's the training of your nervous system to feel safe in a new state of being. It's the daily rehearsal of wholeness, of certainty, of clarity, and the field is always listening. It listens not to your surface desires, but to your dominant frequency, and your dominant frequency is what you feel the most, what you embody the most, what you return to the most. So the real quantum jump happens when the new self becomes the natural self, when it no longer feels like a performance, but like the only thing that ever felt real. And this shift often begins with contrast. The pain of the old becomes unbearable, the misalignment too loud to ignore, and in that tension, a portal opens, a chance to leap, not by logic, but by letting go, because logic wants evidence, but the field responds to embodiment, and embodiment doesn't ask if it's working, it knows, and that knowing is a signal, a transmission that says, I am ready, not for later, but for now. I am ready to be the version of me who doesn't just dream about change, but lives inside it, breathes inside it, walks inside it, and that walk is what reorders reality, step by step, choice by choice, thought by thought, and each time you choose the new identity, you reinforce the new frequency, and each time you reinforce the new frequency, the old timeline dissolves, not because it was wrong, but because it's no longer resonant. And this is the secret most people miss. The old version of you is not your enemy, it was your teacher, it brought you here, it showed you contrast, it revealed the gap, and now that you've seen the gap, your job is not to fill it with effort, but to leap across it with energy and trust. Trust that the version of you on the other side is not imaginary, but inevitable if you keep tuning to them, choosing them, honoring them, and the field will meet you halfway always, because the field is interactive, it's not fixed, it's fluid, and your interaction with it creates feedback loops. You shift your energy, the field shifts your mirror, and at first the shift is subtle, small changes, small wins, small validations, but over time, as the new self stabilizes, the new world solidifies, and suddenly, things that once felt hard feel effortless, things that once felt distant feel familiar. And it's not because the world changed, it's because you changed the signal, you became the source, not the seeker. And that's when the quantum jump becomes your new normal, not a miracle, but a method, not a fantasy, but a framework. And the framework is simple: shift your state, shift your story, shift your signal, and the field will echo back your new frequency, again and again and again, because it always does, not out of fairness, but out of coherence. Coherence is the law. And when you live in internal coherence, when your thoughts, feelings and actions align, the field has no choice but to mirror that alignment with precision and speed. So the question is not will it work, the question is, are you willing to become the version of you who no longer needs to ask? And that version lives inside you now. They are not waiting, they are broadcasting, they are not seeking, they are anchoring, and you can meet them in this moment by dropping the doubt, by stepping into the energy, by breathing into the choice and anchoring the state, not for 10 minutes, but for life. And yes, you'll wobble, yes, the old timeline will whisper, his fear will ask for your attention, but now you know you have a choice, and choice is the jump. The real leap is in the decision to embody a different energy, even when nothing has changed yet, especially when nothing has changed yet, because that's the moment the signal becomes stronger than the circumstance, and when the signal is stronger, the shift is inevitable. The loop is broken, the jump is made, not by effort, but by identity, and identity is who you are when you're not performing. Who you are when you're not reacting, it's who you are when no one is watching. And if you want to live in a higher reality, you must become the version of you who lives there, not someday, but now, and that version is not a fantasy, they are a frequency, and frequencies can be accessed, attuned, remembered. the more you remember, the faster the field responds, not because it rewards you, but because it reflects you. It's always reflecting you, and that reflection is sacred, not good, not bad, just accurate. And if you don't like what you see, don't curse the mirror. Adjust the signal, shift the vibe, update the story, and reality will follow, not instantly but inevitably, because the field is loyal to your frequency, loyal to your embodiment, loyal to your baseline. So make your baseline a sanctuary, make your signal a home, make your inner world a match for the reality you wish to live in, and the external world will catch up, because it has to, it always does, and when it does, you won't even be surprised, you'll just smile, because it's not a miracle, it's a mirror, and that mirror never lies, it only amplifies. And when the mirror amplifies your truth, your coherence, your chosen frequency, reality becomes less about reaction and more about refinement. You're no longer chasing alignment, you're curating it, you're not hoping for signs, you're becoming the signal, and signals don't beg, they beam, they don't ask, they activate, they don't wait, they walk, and your walk becomes your declaration, a vibration that says, this is who I am, this is where I live, this is what I allow, and the field hears it, feels it, reflects it, and that reflection becomes your new feedback loop, no longer bound by old wounds, old worries, old wants, but built from the clarity of who you've decided to be, and deciding is the power most forget. They wait for confirmation before committing, they ask life to go first, but life is not the initiator, you are, your decision is the spark, your embodiment is the fuel, and your state is the container that holds the flame, and when you hold the flame long enough, it becomes a fire that burns through the old timelines, the old narratives, the old limitations, and leaves only the core, the essence, the truth, and the truth is, you were never meant to fit into an old story, you were meant to write a new one, not from pressure, but from presence, not from proving, but from knowing, and that knowing becomes your compass, your code, your anchor, even when the world is loud, even when doubt creeps in, even when nothing outside reflects your new reality. Yet, you stay anchored, and the field respects anchors, because anchors stabilize the signal, and a stable signal creates acceleration. What once took years takes weeks, what once took effort takes flow, and flow becomes your new rhythm, your default, your natural habitat, and in that habitat, you become unrecognizable, not to yourself, but to your past, because the past no longer recognizes your vibration. It tries to pull you back, but you've changed addresses, you've changed channels, you've changed timelines, and those timelines collapse when they're no longer reinforced, and reinforcement is energy, is attention, is emotion, so withdraw your attention from what you don't want, stop rehearsing the past, stop recycling the fear, stop feeding the loop, and feed the frequency, the one you want to live in, the one you want to wake up inside of every day, until it feels like breathing, natural, effortless, inevitable, and that inevitability is not luck. It's law, the law of resonance, the law of identity, the law of embodiment, and all of it is working for you the moment you work with it, not as a concept, but as a commitment, a lived frequency, a trusted knowing that what you hold internally shapes what arrives externally, and now you begin to see how the quantum works, not as magic, but as mechanics, invisible mechanics governed by coherence, by repetition, by readiness, and you become ready, not by waiting, but by choosing, not by perfecting, but by practicing, and every practice is a declaration, every choice is a casting call, every moment is an audition for the reality you say you want, and the field takes notes, not on your words, but on your signal, and your signal is not what you say you want, it's what you truly believe you are, it's what you expect, what you prepare for, what you normalize, and when you normalize the new reality, it shows up, because it belongs to you, not by entitlement, but by embodiment, and that's the shift from dreaming to doing, from wanting to being, from observing to originating, and origin is power. You're no longer echoing, you're initiating, you're no longer looping, you're leaping, and leaps don't require certainty, they require courage, courage to let go of the known, courage to walk, blindfolded by logic, but led by resonance, and resonance never lies, it guides, it pulls, it aligns, and when you trust that pull more than your programming, the universe opens not as a reward, but as a response. It says, oh, you're serious now, and then doors appear, paths open, support arrives, and it's not a miracle, it's mathematics. It's how energy obeys intention, how the invisible responds to the internal, and that's what quantum jumping is. It's a dance between clarity and courage, a fusion of alignment and action, and it's not about skipping steps, it's about shifting states, shifting the state from fear to freedom, from delay to decision, from fragmentation to coherence, and in coherence, things click. They flow, they unfold, not because you hustled, but because you harmonized. You tuned yourself to the timeline where your desires already exist, and when you live from that timeline, not visit it, live in it, embody it, the quantum jump is no longer a moment, it's a movement, a sustained state, a new home for your energy, your identity, your life, and from that home, you don't chase the future, you call it in, you calibrate to it, you live it into being, and that being becomes the blueprint. For every next step, not a plan, but a pulse, not a map, but a magnetic field, pulling you forward, not from effort, but from essence. And essence doesn't hustle, it hums, it radiates, it remembers, and when you remember your essence, everything that's not you begins to fall away, identities that were borrowed, stories that were inherited, fears that were programmed, they lose their gravity not because they're gone, but because you've risen above their pull, and that rise is subtle, it's steady, it's sovereign, it doesn't scream, it settles, it centers, and in that center you find access to dimensions you couldn't see when. You were spinning in survival, when you were looping in limitation, and now the field around you starts to respond, not to your efforts, but to your energy, because energy precedes manifestation, state precedes circumstance, and once your state is aligned, your surroundings begin to rearrange, people shift out of your life or step in, old problems resolve or dissolve, synchronicities increase, timelines merge. And this isn't magic, it's resonance in motion, your inner world becoming loud enough to echo into the outer world, and that echo is your life telling you, you've shifted, you've leapt, you're no longer chasing probability, you're generating inevitability, and inevitability is built not on pressure, but on presence, presence in the body, presence in choice, presence in the now, and now is the only access point for the quantum, the only moment where all versions of you exist simultaneously, the past self, the present self, the future self, all sitting at the same table, waiting for you to choose, and choice is the steering wheel of the quantum, your declaration is the ignition, your alignment is the fuel, and when those align, you move, not step by step, but state by state, and the state doesn't ask, what do I need to do? The state says, who am I being? And being is the foundation of all reality, because you don't get what you want, you get what you are, what you signal, what you stabilize, and stabilization takes practice, not perfection, it takes emotional endurance, energetic congruence, an unshakable knowing that even when the 3D hasn't caught up, the field already has, and your job is not to wait, it's to walk, to live as if, to move as if, to embody as if the reality is already true, and that embodiment is not pretending, it's remembering that your future self is not out there, it's already in you, coded into your imagination, into your desire, into your resonance, and your job is to let that self lead, to give it space to act, to speak, to move through you, until the version of you that was waiting becomes the version of you that's walking, and walking builds momentum, walking tells the quantum you're serious, walking generates the signal that shapes outcomes, and that signal says, this is who I am, this is what I allow, this is what I trust, and trust is the ultimate accelerator, because trust collapses doubt, and doubt is what delays quantum shifts, not because it's bad, but because it fractures the signal, it tells the field. You're undecided, and the quantum doesn't deliver based on want, it delivers based on certainty, not certainty in how, but certainty in who, and that certainty is a choice to ground into your new identity, to act as the frequency, to behave as the belief, to move as the manifestation before it's physical, because the field is always listening, always translating your state into scenes, your frequency into form, your coherence into conditions, and when you stop trying to convince reality and start aligning your vibration, you no longer wait for change, you initiate it, you no longer hope for timelines, you choose them, you no longer seek portals, you become one, and becoming is the real leap, the real jump, not from one life to another, but from one self to another, from one frequency to another, and that jump doesn't require understanding, it requires surrender, surrender to what pulls you, even if it makes no sense, surrender to what expands you, even if it scares you. Surrender to the self that feels like freedom, even if it's unfamiliar, because unfamiliar isn't unsafe, it's just unpracticed, and everything you've ever become started as unfamiliar, until you practiced it, until you chose it, until you normalized it, and that's how quantum shifts work, not as escape, but as expansion, not as fantasy, but as frequency. You don't leave your life, you lead it differently, from a higher vantage point, a deeper truth, a clearer signal, and in that signal you stop asking how and start asking who. Who am I when I'm no longer rehearsing the old? Who am I when I'm no longer resisting the new? Who am I when I just allow myself to be? And in that allowance you find access, you find alignment, you find acceleration, and the leap becomes less about where you land, and more about how you launch, not from effort, but from energy, not from fear, but from faith, not from programming, but from presence. And presence is the portal, because in presence there is no separation between you and your desire, there is no gap between intention and experience, there is only alignment, and alignment collapses timelines, it shortcuts the distance, it compresses cause and effect into a single now moment, where reality bends not to your will, but to your willingness to be real, and being real means letting go of masks, of projections, of who you think you should be, and dropping into the raw, electric, undeniable signal of who you are, beneath the roles, behind the logic, beyond the loops. And from that place your signal becomes clean, it becomes consistent, it becomes compelling, and the quantum always responds to clarity, because clarity is a frequency, and frequency is how the universe organizes itself. It doesn't respond to noise, it responds to coherence, and coherence doesn't mean you never wobble, it means you don't abandon the signal when you do, it means you keep coming back, you keep tuning in, you keep calibrating to the reality you're calling in, and that calibration is daily, hourly, sometimes moment to moment, but each time you choose it, each time you realign, you reinforce the path, you reinforce the portal, you reinforce the probability, until probability becomes inevitability, and inevitability becomes reality, and that reality is one you created, not through control, but through coherence, not through strategy, but through state, because state is the blueprint, it's the script, it's the root of everything you experience, and this is the mistake most people make. They try to change the outer without stabilizing the inner, they try to force results without shifting the signal, they try to leap realities while carrying the same identity, and the quantum doesn't work like that. It doesn't follow force, it follows frequency, it doesn't care what you want, it cares what you're tuned to, and what you're tuned to is what you'll notice, what you'll attract, what you'll normalize, and normalization is powerful. Because the moment you normalize the new self, the new world must meet you there, it must conform to your coherence, because reality is malleable, it's adaptable, it's relational, it follows your rhythm, and the rhythm begins with your thoughts, your feelings, your choices, your self-talk, your breath, your stillness, your joy, your courage, all of it tells the field who you are, and the field never argues, it mirrors, and if you don't like the mirror, don't smash the glass. Shift the signal, don't judge the reflection, update the identity because identity is not static, it's selected, and you select it moment by moment, breath by breath, repetition by repetition, until it roots into your nervous system and becomes your new normal, and from that normal you quantum jump, not because you pushed, but because you pulsed, not because you tried, but because you tuned, not because you forced, but because you flowed, and that flow is the real key because flow is not passive. It's precision, it's presence, it's alignment in motion, and when you move from that space, life rearranges, timelines reorder, doors open, not because you chased them, but because you became the version of you they were waiting for, and this is the essence of quantum jumping. It's not about skipping steps, it's about shifting states, it's not about becoming someone else, it's about becoming more fully you, and the more fully you become you, the more the field has to respond, the more the universe has to reflect, the more your world begins to mirror the truth you're finally embodying, and that embodiment is what makes the jump stick, it's what stabilizes the leap, so you don't bounce back to old timelines, it anchors the new frequency so deeply that the old one can't find you anymore, and when it does, You recognize it as a visitor, not a home, a test, not a truth, a memory, not a mandate, and you return again and again and again to the new, to the real, to the radiant, and in that return, you rewrite the code, you repattern the loop, you reclaim the reality, and eventually you look around and realize the shift already happened, the leap already landed, the future already arrived, and all that was required was presence in practice, and courage in action, and truth in frequency. And now that you understand the mechanics of quantum jumping, the question becomes, are you willing to act from the version of you who already made the leap, not wait until it's proven, not wait until it's comfortable, but to decide that your signal matters more than your circumstances, because your circumstances are just a reflection of your past signal, a mirror, not a mandate, and that mirror will start to change the moment your coherence becomes stronger than your conditioning. And coherence is not perfection, it's consistency, it's the willingness to stay in the new frequency even when nothing has changed yet, because everything is changing beneath the surface, and that's the part most people miss. They jump once but go back. They set a new intention but keep checking the old story. They take a new action but rehearse an old identity, and they wonder why the shift doesn't stick. But it doesn't stick because it's not being lived. It's being visited, like a vacation, not like a home. Quantum jumping is not a one-time event, it's a lifestyle, it's a relationship with reality where you're constantly communicating through your signal, and that signal is how you hold yourself, how you speak, how you breathe, how you believe, how you choose when no one is watching, and when you embody that signal long enough, the field shifts, not out of magic, but because of magnetism, because you are now aligned with the timeline you were once only dreaming about, and this is where things get wild. You'll notice synchronicities, people reaching out, opportunities unfolding, ideas landing, clarity arriving, not because you forced it, but because you tuned into it, because you stopped being the version of you who needs proof, and became the version who is proof, who walks with knowing, not needing, who trusts the resonance, not the rules, and the more you do that, the more normal it becomes, the more natural the surreal becomes, the more effortless the transformation feels, because you're not pushing, you're allowing, not reacting, but responding, not surviving, but surfing the wave of your own evolution, and the waves will come, energy surges, emotion purges, identity contractions and expansions, and that's okay, that's expected. You're stretching into a new reality, and the body will catch up, and the mind will doubt, and the old you will whisper, but now you know the truth. The whispers aren't wisdom, they're echoes, echoes of a frequency you no longer inhabit, echoes of a loop you no longer serve, and the more you let the echo fade, the more clearly you hear the signal, and the signal is always love, always alignment, always your future self calling you forward, not from force, but from frequency, from truth, from trust, and in that trust, the leap becomes a landing not into somewhere else, but into who you've always been, underneath the programming, underneath the performing, underneath the proving, a being of choice, a creator of timelines, a conductor of reality, and this is not fiction, it's physics, it's energy, it's coherence applied and embodied over time, and yes, time still exists here, but it bends, it accelerates, it responds, and the more you respond with presence, with integrity, with clarity, the faster the reflection shifts, because you are now quantum aligned, not in thought, but in state, and the quantum doesn't speak words, it speaks resonance, it speaks now, it speaks frequency, and when you meet it, here, now, coherent, clear, congruent, it has no choice but to reflect the version of you have become. So now you know you don't need to fight to jump, you don't need to hustle to change, you just need to choose the signal of your next self and live from it, breathe from it, trust it when it's hard, embody it when it's invisible, and that embodiment will create evidence, that embodiment will rewire identity, that embodiment will collapse time, and that is the real quantum jump, not a trick, not a shortcut, but a total shift in authorship, where you remember that the pen is always in your hand, the field is always listening, and your next reality is not waiting, it's already available the moment you say yes and live like you mean it.